I'm going to repeat it. The bottom line is, I'm looking for a generous donor visionary who feels it his duty and his calling, or her duty and her calling, to create a space that Jewish teens, high schoolers can call home. There's a war of ideas raging on the street right now. This is obvious. This is clear. The influence from social media is tremendous, and Jewish teens are confused, as are Jewish adults, as are Jewish altakakers. We're all, struggling in different ways.
Not even teens.
Huh?
Not even teens.
And you know what? Not even teens. You have kids, and there are young adults, and there are all ages are on this pendulum now. This is an identity crisis, the likes of which we've never seen. And Chabad is on the front lines, being there, supporting and teaching the core values that strengthen and solidify Jewish identity. So we're looking for somebody that wants to give $120,000 that's going to close it with no out the door. I don't have to deal with long-term things. This is an out-the-door thing. You know what? If you have $60,000, that's also good. Well,
I was going to say, you don't want to open this up as a fund.
I don't want to make it into a crowdfunding thing.
Because it'll take too long.
This is an opportunity that I believe there's an energy out there that could be grasped right here.
You need an angel.
I need an angel. Thank you. I need a malach. I need somebody to step in. Yeah, I guess in a certain way, like the real angel investor. So that's just something I'm putting out there. And if you know somebody that feels that this is close to their heart, please let me know. The last point of introduction before we start is that Eliakim Chanoich brought this book here today, and I have to give it a plug. This is a new book. This just came out, hot off the press. It's now in stores. This is called The Chitas in English. Nobody thought this would be possible. I remember talking about this with friends 10 years ago. People said this is a dream, this will never happen. Every single day, beginning in 1943, the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe encouraged that every Jew should study a portion of Chumash every day, the Torah to complete the portion every week, a portion of Tehillim to complete it every month, and a portion of Tanya to complete it every year. So you cover all the units of time, weekly, monthly, yearly. And until recently, these texts were basically inaccessible to those that didn't have an understanding of Hebrew. Recently, with the proliferation of online classes and the Chayenu publication, they began to publish weekly pamphlets where they translate that week's Chitas. Chitas stands for Chumash, Tehillim, Tanya. But now somebody took it upon themselves to make a book. You wouldn't believe it. It's pretty big, but it's pretty small for what it contains. Yeah. It contains the entirety of the Torah and Rashi's commentary translated into English, the entirety of Tehillim, Psalms translated into English, and the entirety of the Tanya translated into English. You can take this and commit to daily study of Chumash, Tehillim, Tanya every single day. It is the Rebbe, I gotta say, it's probably one of the number one things that the Rebbe would recommend for people that were looking for conduits of blessing in their life. Many times Rebbe would recommend check your tefillin, check your mezuzahs. This was right alongside them. He would always say, no doubt you know about the daily regimen of studying Torah that my father-in-law instituted. It is literally a conduit of blessing for life. And today you have classes online, you have this in English. I just had to plug it. I had to plug it and say it's worth the $70 that you'll pay for it in the store. It'll change your life. And you just got it. And you brought it today, and we're going to figure out what the book is. But, Chayenu. It's actually on the back. Chayenu. Yeah, because they've made it, all these weekly things, so they turned it into a book.
So it's a compilation of all that are weekly.
Yes. It's a new translation that they've made.
Can you buy it on Kikot?
Yes.
That's where you can buy it on Kihot. Yeah. It's going on Amazon very soon, I understand.
Can you put the link in there?
Yes, I will.
Yeah.
You have it?
I can get it. Yeah.
Get it? Put it in, okay? Eliakim's going to put it into the chat. This is a must-buy and a great way to start the new Jewish year. I mean, this you couldn't ask for better. So thank you for bringing this. And yes, that's what I'm saying. It's accessible. This is no longer the, I don't know, those spiritual words that nobody could access and no one knows what it's saying. This is a modern English translation, obviously authentic and true to the tradition. $70 right now, between 65 and 70. I actually have a shipment. You know what? If anybody wants to commit, I have a shipment coming in now that I pre-ordered for $50 a piece. So it's an opportunity that, yeah, I mean, if he doesn't, it's his. So if you don't mind, pass it around. Just take a look at it. This is unbelievable stuff. I may have something coming in for 50.
This is for 2.
Wow. Okay. I don't know if I can give one person 2 though. Who's taking it? You?
Oh, yeah.
And somebody who doesn't study chitas yet? Wow. You want 2? We're selling them all right now. I have to get more.
How many do you have?
Right now I have 10. I only have 10. No, I didn't sell all 10. Now I have 8. Ellie wants 2.
I'll take 1.
He takes 1.
70, right?
Well, I have 50, but if you want to give 70, that's good. I have a deal. What do you want to do? 70?
I'll do 50. I'll do the deal.
Which Jew won't do a deal?
20 another time.
Okay.
I'm going to ask him for a commission.
Please.
The Siddur was the
2?
closing thing.
1. Done. Okay. To the class. There's a rabbi who lives in Sydney. Sydney, Australia. His name is Rabbi Aaron Moss. Don't know if you've heard of him. If you've come across Chabad.org's question and answer section on their website, he's very often one of the rabbis who answers questions that come into the website. He's very, very direct, but very, very clever, very wise.
Ask Moses.
Huh? It used to be, that was Ask Moses in its original form. Now it's just all Chabad.org. Ask Moses is kind of defunct. It's like a column within Chabad.org. So he gets this question. He tells the story. Somebody wrote in the following question. It says, "Hi, my name is Edward. I grew up fairly traditional. I had a bris, bar mitzvah, but I never really believed in anything Jewish. And by now, I'm 34, 35 years old. I basically classify myself as an atheist. I don't believe in God. I don't practice any of the Jewish faith. I purposely married a non-Jew with a civil wedding. Didn't want any clergy involved. I'm also not interested in being buried in a Jewish cemetery, and I've already indicated in my will, this guy's 35, I've already indicated in my will to that effect that I shouldn't be buried in a Jewish cemetery. But my question for the rabbi is that it? Is my non-commitment to Judaism effective just by opting out, or is there some kind of ceremony that I can do to quit Judaism? It's like to convert, there's a whole conversion process. Is there like a converting out process? So Rabbi Moss, he answers this email. He says, look, he says, Edward, I want to help you, but I just feel like there's nothing I can do. He says, you're so committed, or according to what you wrote, you've done everything possible to negate your being Jewish. You know, you've clearly married out of the faith, so you won't have Jewish children. You're determined not even to be buried with your brethren. You don't keep Jewish tradition and practice. You don't believe it in your heart and in your mind. I would say, he says, Rabbi Moss, that's pretty good to confirm your not Jewishness. And yet somehow you don't have rest. He says to him, somehow, for some reason, you're unsatisfied. You're looking for the official stamp of the way out. And by the way, as an atheist, you don't turn to your civil guy who did your wedding. You turn to a rabbi. It's like, how ironic is that? Not a doctor, not a psychiatrist, not even a rabbi you come to. He tells him it's like that. You know, they say that the kid who left home, but he kept on running around the block because his parents didn't let him cross the street by himself. Right? Basically told him, it's like, there's nothing you can do. You're as Jewish as Moses, and you can't undo that. Being Jewish is being part of a family. You're branded. You can be adopted, but you can't leave. Not only that, he says, it seems like your Jewishness is the most dominant factor of your personality. It's what's getting you to make all these decisions. Why would an atheist care where he's buried? But you're writing your will where you're going to be buried, And he basically explained to him that Judaism is not a belief, it's not a feeling, it's not a set of rituals. That isn't the core or the heart of Judaism. Judaism is a state of being. It's who your soul is. So don't fight it. Celebrate it. And that really sums up the character of tonight's chapter. We kind of got swept away, in a good way, with the tzaddik. I did not think we were going to spend three classes on chapter 10, but we did, and it's great. Chapter 11 is very short. It's from the shorter chapters in the Tanya. It's just one page, so I'm going to try to cover it all tonight. Chapter 11 of the Tanya is about the Russia. Okay, the polar opposite. The Russia is legally classified as wicked. That's how we translate Russia, wicked. And in the Talmudic understanding, it's measured by action. So if you're 51% good, you're a tzaddik. If you're 51% bad, you're a Russia. That's it. But in the Alter Rebbe's book and in the Tanya's view, I keep on repeating this line, but it's just the truth. It's not about what you do, it's about who you are. That is the bottom line difference between the Tanya's classification and the legal or conventional understanding of these terms. Until the Tanya came about, the common understanding was that what measures you is what you do. And the Tanya comes and introduces the idea that it's true, all of what you do is important, but these are all reflections of what you are. What kind of a soul do you have? The tzaddik's soul, as we've seen, is a soul of complete selflessness. No identity, no ego, excuse me. His identity is one with the infinite. There's no battle. He's chased out the evil, at least from the conscious, even from the subconscious. The Russia, in the Tanya's understanding, is a person who fails, is a person who gives in and violates God's will. But that's not his defining factor. That is just a proof about what type of soul he has. If a person is capable of giving in, compromising, even once, on God's will, that means that his godly soul is weak, which is actually the biblical translation of the word Russia. I know we're very easy to translate Russia as wicked person, but in the biblical context, when the word Russia is used, it means chalash, weak. Because that is the core of the Russia. Tzaddik is Superman, Russia is the weak man. Because there's a weak soul. How do I know there's a weak soul? Because the godly soul, if it was strong, if it had all its wits about her, it cannot bring itself to violate God's will because it's one with God. So the facts reveal the state of the soul. If there was violation, there has to be some kind of a weakness. So the slip-up becomes the evidence, not the definition. It teaches us about what kind of a person we are. And that's why there's so many varying degrees. A Russia, by the Alter Rebbe's definition, could be a pretty big tzaddik by our definitions, okay? A Russia is a spectrum. There's many levels. But let's talk about the Russia at his highest level. Okay, the best type of Russia that there is. In the Tanya's book, again, and the Tanya is very strict. It's not inspiring or fun necessarily.
When you mean best type, you mean like
Huh?
biggest sin? When you mean best type, you mean like biggest sinner?
No, best type I mean least sinner.
Oh, wait.
What is the best type of Russia you could be? What's the best type of weak man you could be? The best type of weak man you could be, says the Alter Rebbe, is where the sin has the least quantitative and qualitative effect on your soul. What does that mean? He goes into detail. Quantitative means, first of all, simply, time-wise. It happens once in a blue moon. Once in 20 years, let's call it, just for the sake of bringing out the point. Once a year, but I'm saying once in 20 years to bring out the point. When he slips up, how much control does he give up? Also, least in quantity. And we'll talk about what we addressed in the Tanya earlier as the three garments of the soul, because those are the three tools with which it interacts with the world outside it: thought, speech, and action. So thought, speech, and action are basically your toolbox in getting out of oneself. So how much control does he let go of? He doesn't let go of them all. He only lets go of one. Maybe he lets go of action. Maybe he lets go of speech. Maybe he lets go of thought. Once in a blue moon, again, very, very rarely, he does something wrong. And even that, it's a very little wrong. Or once in 20 years, he speaks something which is not even Lashon Hara, it's like a lower level. Or he thinks, he imagines doing an Avera. That's it. Doesn't even do it. He just thinks about doing an Avera. Alter Rebbe says maybe he just has the imagery of a union of a male and a female, not within a Torah context. Maybe even more, he says. Maybe it's not even a deed. Maybe it's a non-deed. Maybe he slips up by not learning Torah when he's able to. So again, if you think about it, the highest version of a Rasha is a pretty big tzaddik. Right? 20 years straight, he's doing everything right. Then he slips up once, maybe in thought, maybe in speech, maybe in action, maybe in non-action. And even then, the Alter Rebbe says he does tshuva. He does proper tshuva, which we believe, again, wipes away the sin. But that's still a Rasha. That's still weak. Because if he fell through, then by definition his godly soul is weak. That's the highest extreme. The highest extreme of a Rasha is a person who does many, many good things. The Tanya focuses on the part where he slipped up, but if you think about it, this is a man who does mitzvahs all day, studies Torah all day, does everything right, and once a decade does something off, and he does tshuva for that too, doesn't make a difference. The spectrum continues to somebody who might give in a little bit more. On all levels, right? So first of all, he's sinning more often. It's not once in a decade, it's once a year. It's not once a year, it's once a month. Once a month, once a week, whatever it is. And maybe he cedes control also of more of the divine soul. Not just action or speech or thought, maybe it's all three. But at least, the Alter Rebbe says, at least such a person, he has regret. Full of Jewish guilt. Yeah? Basically, the way the Alter Rebbe describes it, it's very poignant. He says, the godly soul is weak, and it doesn't have the power to stand up and fight. We've all been there. You've been knocked down, you've been knocked down, you've been knocked down, and you don't have the power to get up and keep at it. But the regret is there. It's honest. It's not a guy who's fooling around. Tanya's a religious book, but we can all learn from the psychological counterparts of these things. Talk to people in addiction that are honest about themselves, not the guys that are completely out of touch with reality. They don't mean any of the weakness. It becomes a cycle in which you go into the weakness and you just can't fight your way out. But you really regret it. But you fall in again. But the regret is not fake. But the cycle continues. Like Edward. Something about his heart was just bothering him. He tried this, he tried that. Reminds me of another story I just heard literally yesterday from a friend in Miami. I was talking on the phone with him because we're both teaching Tanya. We're both teaching around this area, and that's what's cool about having friends all over the world and all kind of teaching the same page. We discuss, we share, we bounce off ideas. So he told me that there was a rabbi. Many of you may know him, Rabbi Steinsaltz of blessed memory.
Yes.
Okay, one of the most deep thinkers of the last generation, prolific author, one-man job, translated the Talmud into Hebrew by himself. I met him in 2014. I had a great privilege when I was in Israel. Huh? In Jerusalem. Besides for all his Torah genius, he was also a scientific genius. A mathematician, a professor. And one Shabbos, he's walking to shul. And he meets a fellow professor. A friend who's also into this stuff, but completely irreligious. Tells Rabbi Steinsaltz, where are you going? He says, I'm going to shul, it's Shabbos. He says, let me tell you something about how I do Shabbos. I'm against everything that has to do with God. I don't believe it, I don't buy it, I'm against it. And I make sure to desecrate the Shabbos in every possible way, every week. My family knows. We come home Friday night, we purposely turn on the lights and the TV, and we order out non-kosher food, and we eat it, and we do this and we do that, and we mix meat and dairy, and then we come up with we write, and we come up with all the ways to break Shabbos, and then Shabbos morning we go to the beach and we carry, and we do all the things, and this is my way. I do it every Shabbos. So Rabbi Steinsaltz, I don't know if you guys see on his videos, he's very sharp sometimes. So he turns to the guy and he says, I envy your level of Shabbat observance. So he looks at him and says, what do you mean? He's like, look at me. How much of the 24 hours of Shabbos am I thinking about Shabbos? I grew up with it. I come, I make Kiddush, we go to shul, we have a meal, I go to sleep, I learn a little bit, I go back. With you, every second of the 24 hours of Shabbos, you're thinking about Shabbos.
To do the opposite.
Shabbos is on your mind, 24 hours. I wish I could be there. When everything else fails in the Jewish soul, that deep-seated knowledge that there's a part of me that I can't get away from, it always rises. People call it Jewish guilt, but that has a negative connotation. I don't know. It's just the Jewish neshama. It's the Jewish spark. For this guy, it's keeping Shabbos, making Kiddush, going to shul. For this guy, it's so Shabbos for me that I can't just do my regular day. I have to keep Shabbos in my way. Which reminds me of another thing that I once heard. Rabbi Kotlarsky, of blessed memory, who used to chair the kinnos, he passed away a couple of months ago. So he started off, before he ran the whole network of shluchim, he started off, like many other Chabad rabbinical students, every summer they would go to different communities to visit and build the infrastructure there. And he had many interesting stories about the different missions he was sent on. One particular time, he was sent to a community, and the Rebbe's secretary told him, your job is to inspire Shabbat observance in this visit. But he said, I want you to go in with the following perspective. He says, you think you're coming to a community of a bunch of people who are desecrating Shabbos. Because it's not that way. First of all, for 8 hours of the night, they're sleeping. So they're not doing any work on Shabbos. Already for a third of Shabbos, they're already keeping Shabbos. Then they sit on their couch and they read. And maybe they chat with family or whatever they do in their kind of bored or downtime. Basically, if you do the math, it's about already 15 hours out of 24, they're already keeping Shabbos. So your job is to inspire the other 9 hours that they should enhance their Shabbat observance. But that was an aside. The point is really that this Jewish sense in which you can't get away from it. The Alter Rebbe calls it, what the Talmud calls it, Risha'im Mile'im Charatot. He says the Russias are filled with regret. What does it mean filled with regret? It means that they have no peace in living the life that they choose. They think they do. It's temporary peace. They chase another thing. But there's always something lurking in the bottom of their heart that doesn't allow for full tranquility. Because there can be no tranquility until the soul embraces its potential. And that's the spectrum of what he calls the Rasha V'tovlo, the Rasha who has some good. At the highest level, he's basically all good, just a tiny amount of weakness. At the lower level, there's more negativity, there's more violation of Hashem's will, but still, the core is awake, the fire is burning. But then the Alter Rebbe says, there's another category. There's the worst Rasha, the Rasha who only has bad. Doesn't care. What do we do with this Rasha? How do we find some redeeming quality? So if you have the Tanya, I want to read that part inside. $137, if you have the book. I have 2 extra ones here, I want to pass them around. This is maybe an even worse version of Edward. This is like next level. Let's read it. First, the paragraph of commentary on top. There's an extreme case, however, where the Rasha never entertains thoughts of repentance, since his evil has gained full dominance over him. Says the Alter Rebbe, but a person who never feels remorse and does not have any thoughts of repentance at all is classified as a Rasha who has it bad. In this case, the evil in his animal soul is all that remains as having influence within him, for the evil has so overwhelmed the good that it has caused the good to depart from inside him. And good now has no role in his inner life. But, next line, of course this does not mean that he has actually lost his divine soul. It is only that its influence has been banished. His good still exists, hovering above his body, but it does not penetrate him. You know what? To appreciate this, we don't usually do this. Once we pass a page, and I forgot everything it says there. But if you contrast this to the tzaddik, because the Rasha loses all his good, but the tzaddik loses all of his bad. What does it say by the tzaddik? I'm going to show you one line. If you go back to page 124, if you go back to page 124, third paragraph, you see it starts with the word now. The Alter Rebbe defines what a complete tzaddik is. He says, now with a complete tzaddik, whose evil has been, and the next word is the key word, transformed to good. That's the complete tzaddik. When the complete tzaddik loses the evil, what happens to the evil? It's transformed to good. Look at the terminology here. Back to 137. He does not say that the evil that evil transformed all the good into evil. It says the evil so overwhelmed the good that it caused the good to depart. It pushed him out. Because you can never kill that fire.
So even the tzaddik has the evil, but
no, with the
it's
tzaddik,
able to turn it into good.
The tzaddik can turn it into good.
Yeah.
But the Rasha can never turn the good into bad. The good always stays. Not in an influential, penetrating way, but in a more hovering way, what he calls. Because that's what's too bad about Judaism. Your neshama is there. You can kind of push it out of the system, but it stays right there. And The Alter Rebbe closes the chapter with this line. That is why, middle of 137, that is why the sages of blessed memory said, over every 10, the divine presence rests. Even if they are in the level of a Rasha who possesses only bad, because when the divine soul's influence is banished, its presence still hovers and rests above the body. You bring 10 apostates together into a shul, they can make a minyan. 9 Moses can't make a minyan.
Wow.
But 10 of the Rasha Virales make a minyan. Why? If I could say it in more psychological terms, the Rasha thinks that all he is what he sees in himself. But the truth is, as a Jewish person, you are what Hashem sees in you. And what Hashem sees in you is you can push it all away. You can reject it. You can fight it. You can ignore it. But you can never kill it. Some people are a little bothered. And apparently it sounds like this guy is not even bothered. That's the saddest part of it. He's not even bothered. But it's there. The flame hovers above. And that's why if 9 other Jews in Sherman Oaks are struggling on a Friday night to find the minyan, and we come out across the street to the bar where the guy is on Shabbos eating non-kosher, and we bring him in, what happens?
Get a minyan.
You get a minyan. He doesn't even care. He doesn't even care about what he just did. But that soul that accompanies him comes and transforms the minyan.
That is such a relief. I can relax.
Rabbi?
Reminds me of another story that I also recently heard. There was a chassid, his name was Rabbi Moshe Vyshetsky. He grew up in Russia, under the Iron Curtain. And it's a very cool story about how he came out in 1966. Not for now. Check it up online. He tells the story himself about how they tried for years to get out, and then they wrote a letter to the Rebbe. The Rebbe wrote back one line, and then there was some miracle, the whole thing. Anyway, he came to Israel. And a few weeks after being in Israel, it was on a Shabbos, he was in shul, and he was talking about how wonderful it is to live in Israel after all this oppression in Russia. And they asked him, tell us, what is the thing that you love most about being here in Eretz Yisrael? So he says, you know what I love? I love riding the bus in Tel Aviv and seeing Jews together in the bus. I see Jews, I see the Shekhinah, I see the divine presence. So they're like, okay, but why'd you have to pick Tel Aviv? Like, Tel Aviv is the most degenerate place, and like, yeah, secular. I mean, say Jerusalem, say Bnei Brak, say Kfar Chabad. He says, you don't understand. He says, the Tanya says, he quoted chapter 11. He says, the Tanya says, when every 10 Jews gather, the Shekhinah rests. Doesn't matter who the 10 Jews are. He says, in Russia, we could never get 10 Jews together. We were afraid for our lives. The KGB was on our tails the entire time. We could never gather in more than groups of 3, 4, 5 and do a little farbring and a little thing. I come onto the bus in Tel Aviv and I see the least observant Jew. But I see 10 Jews in a bus, I see the Shekhinah. I need nothing more than that. You're looking for the religious, performance, holiness. I'm just looking for that soul. I'm just looking for that infinite value that I see in every Yid. And this is what I love about living in Eretz Yisrael. Because this is the true nature. This is the true core of a Yid. And by the way, I know you said maybe in jest that it's a relief, but it happens to also be a relief practically. Because looking around this table, we all fall into the classification of the Russia. And it's disheartening when you think about it. Mm-hmm. Can you climb out of being a Russia? Yes, you can, as we're going to learn when we explore the Beinoni. But the Beinoni seems to be so far out of our reach. The Beinoni is the person who 100% of the time wins, practically. Doesn't change his mind or heart. The insides keep rolling like me and you. If you looked at it's kind of funny, by the way, kind of just to put it in perspective. If we had a tzaddik of the Tanya, a Beinoni of the Tanya, and the best version of the Russia of the Tanya, we would see the same Jew. Because the tzaddik does all the mitzvahs, So does the Beinoni. In practice, he's doing everything. And even the best Rasha, he falls once in 20 years. So if you don't see him once in 20 years, you see another 19 years, he looks exactly the same as the other three. This is where you appreciate it's different souls. It's not different actions, it's different neshamas. But the answer is that yes, maybe there's a weakness, but first of all, we have to climb out of the weakness. Fight it, compromise less. Second of all, the fact that we have this core infinity and transcendence is the catalyst for that possibility of change. Because we can never kill the pilot light, you'll always be able to get a fire out of it. And maybe that's the calling of the new year. Rosh Hashanah is coming. Everybody wants change. Did I say it last week? I feel like I'm giving you a bunch of different classes. Like, the word shana in Hebrew, year, it means both shoneh, repeating, and shinui, and change. I did say it last week, right?
No, you didn't.
Oh, okay.
I agree with what you're saying.
Yes. The word year means repeat and it means change. How could it mean both opposite things? Because that's the message. Everything we go through is repeat. Repeat. Again Rosh Hashanah, again Yom Kippur, again Sukkot. But we have to bring some change into that repetitiveness. We have to make it fresh, we have to make it meaningful, we have to make it inspiring. By remembering that the Pintel Yid never goes out. The Shekhinah is always resting on every single one of us. That gives us the power to bring it back in and rekindle the flame. L'chaim.